Okay, section 4 is titled Proportional Relationships and Equations. Please make sure that you check Canvas to see how you should be titling your notes. It's also written on the whiteboard if you're in class. But your goals today are to be able to write the constant of proportionality as an entry in the table. So we're going to find out where does that constant of proportionality show up. Also, I can write an equation in the form y equals kx to represent a proportional relationship that's described by a table or story. And we're going to really memorize that form of the equation y equals kx, as we're going to see it very often throughout the rest of this unit. So let's write equations that describe proportional relationships. Our number talk today is division, and you're asked to find each quotient mentally. Remember that a quotient is the answer to a division problem, and if you're asked to do it mentally, you will not be using calculators. So 645 divided by 100. Thankfully, in Plickard's class, or in science class, you've been working on the metric system, so this is really handy here. 645 divided by 100, you should say 6.45. That's moving the decimal place 2 times to the left. What if it's 645 divided by 50? Think for a minute about what that could be. So we're cutting it into half as many pieces, which means each piece should be twice this size. Hopefully you're saying 12.9. You should be doubling 6.45, 12.9. The next one, 48.6 divided by 30. Students in class struggled with this one a little bit because dividing by 30 is difficult. But if you drop that 0 and pretend like you're dividing by 3, you might be able to recognize that 3 goes into 48 16 times. And again, that might just be you doing a little bit of long division in your head. So if it was 48.6 divided by 3, 3 goes into 48 16 times, and 3 goes into 6 twice. So you would say 16.2. But now that we're saying divided by 30, we need to move that decimal place 1 time to the left. So the answer to this is 1.62. And the last one asks 48.6 divided by x. Students kind of stumbled over this one, but if I don't tell you what x is, you can't give me an answer. You can't find a quotient. It would suffice to say 48.6 over x. Oftentimes we write fractions, division problems as fractions, and you're going to get in the habit of that throughout this unit with these constants of proportionality. So we're going to revisit 2 activities from earlier in this unit. We're going to revisit our rice activity and our spring roll activity. So we're going to answer a series of questions today about these. I would like you first to pause the video, copy this table into your math notebook, and then try to fill the table in. From our work earlier, we knew that 2 cups of dry rice were going to feed 6 people. 2 times 3 is 6. I am multiplying the left side of the table by 3. 3 is my constant of proportionality. You should get 9, 36, 129, and x times 3 is 3x. Now we do kind of just jump right into solving these equations so that we can see what this looks like. But if we use the if we use the equation y equals kx, k is the constant of proportionality. The constant of proportionality in this case is 3. So the equation is y equals 3x. 3 people can be fed on 1 cup of dry rice, or 1 cup of dry rice feeds 3 people. How about that spring roll activity? Now we've got that recipe that says 6 spring rolls serve 3 people. If you could pause the video here, copy down and fill in the table, and then resume the video when you are finished. So if 6 spring rolls serve 3 people, we're essentially dividing by 2, but remember with the constant of proportionality, We can't use division, so instead of dividing by 2, we are multiplying by a half. That's our constant of proportionality. However, as you work through the table, you're welcome to think about division. 1 divided by 2, that's a half. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 25 divided by 2 is 12.5. And n divided by 2 would be essentially n over 2. Or if you think about it with the multiplication, n times a half is 1/2 n. So again, when you're asked to write an equation, y equals kx, they're using n here in place of x. So we could say y equals 1/2 n. N represents the number of spring rolls. Y would represent the number of people. So if you gave me a number of spring rolls, I could tell you how many people we could serve. Okay, the last part of the activity is called Denver to Chicago. Can you locate Denver on the map? Can you locate Chicago? Denver is in Colorado. Chicago is in Illinois. So we have another plane flying at a constant speed between Denver and Chicago, and we're told that it takes the plane 1.5 hours to fly 915 miles. I would like you to pause the video, copy down, and complete the table. So in order to figure out how many miles a plane flies in a certain number of hours, we need to know how far the plane goes in 1 hour. In this table, we're told that in 1.5 hours, the plane flies 915 miles. 915 divided by 1.5 is 610. We now know that the plane is flying at a speed of 610 miles per hour. We were told it was a constant speed, so we can actually fill in the speed of the table, the speed of the plane all the way down the table. So if the plane travels 610 miles in 1 hour, how far does it travel in 2 hours? 610 times 2 is 1,220. 610 times 2.5, how far does it go in 2.5 hours? 1,525 miles. How about T hours? How far does the plane travel in T hours? Well, we are multiplying the left side of the table by 610. So T times 610 is 610 T. So now let's look at an equation. Here, just like before, we would use y equals kx. However, now we're supposed to be relating the variables t and d. Remember that the first column in the table is x, and the second column is y. So now you can say t are substituted for x, and we're substituting d for y. So instead of saying y equals kx, we're saying d equals blank t. Again, I'm just substituting. I know that y comes first and y is being replaced by d. X comes second and x is being replaced by t for time. And now what is the constant of proportionality? What's the number you multiply the left side by to get the right side? Distance equals 610 t. Okay, let's go back and look at the bread dough activity. Remember earlier in this unit, we also worked on an activity about bread dough, and I'm going to take you to that table now. If you can pause the video, copy down the table into your math notebook, and complete the table, then resume the video when you're ready. So this one's a little bit trickier than the first two with the spring rolls and the rice because it's a little harder to see how to get from 8 to 10. Remember, you're trying to see what number do I multiply the left side of the table by to get the right side. And if we don't know, we can use division. So that's what we're going to do. 10 divided by 8 is 1.25. That means I multiply the amount of honey by 1.25 to get the proper amount of flour that's needed for the recipe. So I'm going to multiply all the way down the table by 1.25. And then H times 1.25 is just 1.25H. So now we're asked to write an equation, and so honey here is replacing H is replacing X, and F is replacing Y. So when we want to say Y equals KX, we're now going to say F for flour equals a certain number times H for honey. That number is the constant of proportionality, which we know is 1.25. Now we could figure out how much flour is needed for any amount of tablespoons of honey. Here they're asking for 15 and 17. So we would do F equals 1.25 times 15 to get the answer there, and F equals 1.25 times 17 to get the answer there. Also, I want to point out that the constant of proportionality shows up in a very specific point in the table. Whenever the left side is 1, you're going to see that the right side is the constant of proportionality. And I'm going to go back and verify that in all of our tables. Anywhere we saw the number 1 on the left side, we saw the constant of proportionality in the right side. All 4 tables today. So if someone asks, where in the table do you see the constant of proportionality? It's next to the number 1. Okay, so the cups of rice and people served. Remember that 1 cup of rice serves 3 people. The constant of proportionality was 3. So we say 3 people can be served for every 1 cup of rice. Remember that when you're asked what the constant of proportionality represents, when we use the term represents, that's where we want to use the words, and that's where we want to use those labels or those units. The constant of proportionality itself is just a number. It represents the number of people that can be served by 1 cup of rice. So 3 people per 1 cup of rice. The equation we wrote was y equals 3x. Then we had the activity with the plane. The constant of proportionality here was 610. What did that represent? Well, it was the speed of the plane. The plane travels 610 miles per hour, or per 1 hour. And the equation we wrote here, remember that we replaced distance and time. And the equation we wrote here was D equals 610 T. Okay, please check Canvas to see what your homework assignment is. Again, it is different for the 2 classes, and reach out if you have any questions.